You boys be quiet down there!
Welcome back to PC-88 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-88, the most popular Japanese PC series of the 1980s. Xanadu was Japan's hottest PC game of the 80s, Nihon Falcom's first true hit, and when you've got a hit on your hands, you've got to release a sequel, right? Well, about that, Xanadu already technically was a sequel, Dragon Slayer II. So the following year after Xanadu, Falcom released Dragon Slayer III, Romancia. But Falcom didn't just hedge their bets on this all-new game in the already loosely connected Dragon Slayer series, they had to give the fans what they really wanted, more Xanadu. So literally 5 days before Romancia, Falcom released their first ever game expansion pack, Xanadu Scenario II, The Resurrection of Dragon. Now, one thing that I found a bit lacking in the original Xanadu was the music. Sure, the Xanadu theme, La Valse pour Xanadu, excuse my pronunciation there, is a classic game tune for sure, but it almost literally plays throughout the entire game. So for Scenario 2, Falcom wisely brought on board some new talent, and in doing so, they accidentally kickstarted the career of one of the most famous game music composers ever, Yuzo Koshiro. At the time, Koshiro had just graduated high school and had been working as a writer for a computer magazine. He had some experience designing music programs and composing a few tracks for Onionsoft's 100 yen disc series, but his music had never been used in an actual game. He submitted some sample tracks to Falcom, who immediately brought him on board, at first as a part-time employee, and the story goes that Falcom liked the tracks he had submitted so much, they used them in Xanadu Scenario 2. For Scenario 2, Koshiro was joined by one other composer though, Takahito Abe, who also composed tracks for Romancia, Azteca 2, as well as a couple of Hudson games before quietly exiting the game industry. So without further ado, let's take a look at the packaging for Xanadu Scenario 2, which is very different from that of the first game. It comes in a laminated cardboard case, which is covered by a flimsy cardboard sleeve. This sleeve was definitely not made to last 38 years, because almost every copy you'll find on the used market seems to have this thin section here torn or missing. Maybe I'll put some tape on the back side here. I keep this game wrapped in plastic, by the way, whenever I'm not using it. The laminated case inside has a small strip of Velcro to keep it closed. I'm not sure how these contents were originally situated here, but currently in this pocket we have the discs and a large Xanadu sticker. The manual is quite a bit thinner than the original Xanadu manual, cause they didn't have to explain the basics of how Xanadu works. The story is that it turns out that the king dragon from the first game was undead, and has come back to life. Damn, I can live with Dracula resurrecting every once in a while, but I worked so hard to defeat that dragon the first time. This one really hurts. So of course, our mission is to defeat him again, and the king dragon is given a name here for the first time, Garces. Then there's a short explanation of what's new in Scenario 2, and this time instead of a monster guide, there's a shop guide. Unlike the first game, almost every shop in the game is unique, and again this manual was drawn by our friend Tsuneyuki Miyamoto, along with Tomoyoshi Miyazaki. As for the floppy disks, there are 2 of them. That's a cool sleeve design. I don't know if you can see the disc letters here, but they're labeled D and E. So what happened to A, B, and C? Those would be the 2 game floppies and user disk for the original Xanadu. So how in the world am I going to start this expansion pack? Do I need to load my data from the original? Nope, you don't get to use your previous character. You've got to make a new one. So the first thing we have to do is make a new user disk by booting disk E. The Xanacopy screen looks exactly the same as in the original, but since we're using the Scenario 2 disk, this blank disk I'm inserting here is going to become a Scenario 2 user disk. Once it's finished, we're instructed to remove disk E and replace it with disk A from the original Xanadu, before pressing reset. Well, this is weird. This is just the original game. What am I doing here again? Anyway, I'll create a new character similarly to how I did in the first video, with as much charisma as possible. Then when we fall down the hole and enter the cave, instead of going to stage 1, we get this screen asking us to replace disk A with disk D and reset the system. Okay. Now we're in business. It's the title screen for Scenario 2.
Are you asking me if we're playing out that scenario now?
And right away, this title screen BGM sounds way better than anything from the original game. The music in general is certainly not Koshiro's best work, but this was his first game and it was only 1986. He was competing against the likes of Valis 1 and Sylphid, and I'll take this soundtrack over either of those any day. The artwork here was done by Kazuhiko Tsuzuki, who worked for Falcom during the 80s, and also did the artwork for Ys 2 and a number of games. He also happens to be the one who did this artwork for the Schemes soundtrack CD, which I used in this thumbnail. Anyway, I'll press any key to begin. Stage 1 begins with your character stuck between unavoidable spikes on both sides. You can jump over them, but not without taking some damage. It's like, welcome to the world of Scenario 2. F you. That should give you a pretty good idea of the difficulty ahead.
I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
This first stage has quite a strange layout. It appears to be completely flat, unlike the vast four-way scrolling stages of the original. There are shops and towers everywhere, and if you keep walking in one direction, you'll quickly figure out the stage is just repeating. You have to stop and turn around in certain places in order to get the other areas of the stage to appear. That's some weird trickery, but you get used to it. The stone masks in the ground can also help as a guide to show you where to turn around. Enter a shop and you can see how different things are going to be from the first one. The shops don't have illustrations anymore, and there's music. Each shop is unique, and overall they're more user-friendly than in the first game. Welcome to McDonald's? Likewise, that difficult-to-read inventory screen from the first one is replaced with an actual list of items by name. Things like this go a really long way to make this feel like a true sequel, rather than a mere add-on pack. Some of the shops give tips, and some of them are literally just text. A lot of the text in this game seems to be garbled Bible verses pieced together. They probably just wanted a bunch of English text and didn't know what to write. You'll notice the game has even more English than the first one. And this makes sense since the staff of Falcom at the time were known to play a lot of Western PC games. They probably thought it would be cool to make their games look similar to those made by their idols. One really cool thing is that it no longer costs money to save your game. However, the compromise is that whenever you save manually, the game says "see you next" and locks up until you reset. They really don't want you to use the save feature except when it's time to quit the game, do they? When you save and reset, you're penalized by having to watch the title screen animation, but try holding the spacebar while powering up to skip the title entirely. Additionally, the restore feature which allowed you to load at any time in the first game is gone, so you can't just quickly load your last save when you screw up. However, I made heavy use of the save feature and reset button anyway. I'm sorry, call me too much of a modern gamer, but I just can't not save before difficult parts. I have to save my game, so I found myself saving and resetting a lot. But if you do this, one thing you should be careful to do is keep your hand far away from the reset button until the music goes off and it says, "see you next." The last thing you want to do is reset the system while it's still writing data to the user disk. The little jingles the game stops to play before and after battle are gone, which makes things a little faster. The enemies in this first stage aren't too difficult, but I actually had kind of a hard time earning enough money at first to heal and stay alive. Once you do get a foothold though, here's the trick to the first stage. Find the ABC shop. Hey, is this anything like those ABC stores that they have everywhere in Hawaii? Or maybe it's the Japanese shoe store ABC Mart. Anyway, this is the chain store that sells essential items throughout the game at extra low prices, like these keys for 100 gold. But they'll actually sell them to me for 75 gold since I maxed out my charisma when I created my character. I'm going to buy as many of these keys as I can. Like in the original Xanadu, of course we're going to need a ton of keys for the towers, but the keys I'm buying now aren't for opening doors, they're for selling. Next we'll just head right over to Jim's shop. Here Jim is ripping people off, selling keys for twice as much as the ABC shop. But he'll also buy them for 100 gold. So for every key I just bought for 75, I'm making a profit of 25 gold. During your time here on the first stage, you'll want to make trips back and forth between these two shops, and this is a trick you'll want to take advantage of throughout the entire game. A little later in the game, after stocking up on keys here in the first stage, you can take them all the way to stage 5 for a much bigger profit. Due to the non-linear way the stages are arranged in this one, stage 5 is actually not as far away as it sounds. And once you're strong enough to venture into stage 6, you'll find 2 shops in the same stage that allow you to make probably the easiest profit in the game. Hey Merlin, my man, how's business treating you selling +4 small shields for only 20,000 gold? Cause I've got 255 more to sell you today for only half that price. Where am I getting all these? You know, I guess monsters drop them or something. There's definitely not another shop across the way selling them for only 7,000 gold. No, there's definitely not that. And they're definitely not selling them to me for only 5250 just cause I'm so charismatic. Anyway, hope you've sold at least half of these before I'm back again in 10 minutes. Otherwise you might want to take out another mortgage on this lovely shop you got here. Always a pleasure doing business with you, Merlin.
I think the scenario here is that you're a sleazeball.
So as you can imagine, money is never much of an issue in this game, which is in stark contrast to the first Xanadu. There isn't even inflation this time when you level up, the prices are fixed. You can buy great equipment early on and make the adventure a lot easier. And you're still definitely going to need all the help you can get, because navigating this game isn't easy. One of the shops in the first stage, Bob's Child Shop, says that some of the towers seem to be connected together underground. And in fact, in this one, each stage actually has only one huge tower with multiple entrances, some of which are connected and some of which are not. And there are parts of stages that are only possible to get to via the towers, which is the case even in stage 1. You'll also get to explore the upper parts of stage 1 later on when you get your hands on some winged boots, an item which allows you to fly for a short time, which was also in the first game. And speaking of items, remember how in the first Xanadu items never ran out while in battle, allowing you to use items to stop time or become invisible indefinitely by always leaving one enemy on each screen? Well, Falcom decided they'd had enough of players taking advantage of that and changed it so items run out even while in battle. Now you're going to have to fight them fair and square, using precious items only when you really need them. Also, keys work like a regular item in this one. Instead of automatically using one every time you run into a door like in the original, here you press the item button to use a key and it unlocks all the doors currently on screen. Also, the mantle, which allowed you to walk through the walls and take shortcuts, no longer works in the towers, instead replaced by a new item called Acid, which breaks a hole in each wall on screen. This is a rare item that can only be picked up at certain points though, so you'll only want to use it when you're really sure it will make a good shortcut. So once I had bought the best equipment I could, it was time to move on from stage 1. But rather than stage 2, I actually worked on stage 4 next. Each stage has its own unique music, so it really can't be overstated how much of an upgrade the music is in this one. This stage heavily features one of Scenario 2's new obstacles, slopes. You slide down these and can't climb back up. These are also often paired with one of the other new obstacles, spikes. These take away more HP depending on how many items you have in your inventory. Early in the game, when you have less items, these spikes are a pesky annoyance, requiring you to use a red potion immediately after encountering them. But once I got a little further into the game, I loved carrying a ton of keys and red potions, which meant that even one hit from the spikes meant certain death. I may do eventually using winged boots to get past unavoidable spikes, once they became available to purchase. You can jump over some of these spike layouts using keyboard techniques for weird double jumps, and the key combinations required are even weirder than in the last game. Here you need to actually press 4-9 in order to get a jumping start toward this ladder. You literally pull a Wile E. Coyote and stand in midair for a moment before jumping, and that's only one example of some of the weird key combinations you have to press. And all the enemies are brand new. How about some of these weird enemies? What are these cloud eye things called? Oh, B-girls, of course. Evil load? Well, I guess if they kill me, I'm going to have to lord my game. And look, it's Kang and Kodos. And my favorite, the Dinks. Stage 4 also has the first karma enemy of the game. You're going to want to avoid killing Marge or you're going to take on karma, which you really don't want to do since you won't be able to enter the final stage or even level up. I think if there's one element from the Xanadu games that I would do away with, it's the karma system. It's really just too cruel, even for a game this old. This one has tricky karma enemies that look nearly identical to non-karma enemies, and even enemies that aren't karma enemies at first, but later become karma enemies when you encounter them for the 4th time. Isn't that devious? I fell victim to this one and of course didn't notice until I played for about 3 hours without backing up my user disk. Of course I backed up pretty often thanks to my experience playing the first game, but it still blows having to go back and redo your work. I can only imagine how bad it would be if you were using only one single user disk for the entire game, which I'm sure a lot of people did back in the day. It would be fine if karma enemies only gave you a few points of karma each, but killing even one swarm of them can max you out to 255. Then the only way to get rid of it is by slowly finding bottles of poison in the towers. And in this one, there's also poison that doesn't even bring down your karma. You have to look for ones that have a subtle difference in the number of white dots on the bottle. I desperately tried seeking out the karma reducing ones in order to salvage my game, only to quickly realize it would be faster to just use my backup and redo my last 3 hours of playtime. I'm not even sure there's enough karma reducing poison in the game to save you if you manage to max out your karma. But other than a couple of karma mishaps, the one I just mentioned being the biggest, my progress through Scenario 2 was actually pretty smooth. Getting through the original was a bit of an ordeal for me, but in Scenario 2 I was able to utilize my previous knowledge, combined with, of course, the wealth of information on Scenario 2 available online. Particularly, I want to give an extra special shout out again to this channel. Scenario 2 is harder to navigate, and has 11 stages instead of 10, so if playing blind, Scenario 2 is probably the more difficult game to figure out. On the other hand, mistakes other than karma are maybe a little easier to undo in Scenario 2, due to the basically infinite amount of money you can accumulate through the game's economy. Scenario 2 has a ton of different bosses, each of which appears multiple times throughout the game. Each even has their own BGM. And while in the first one you had these Egyptian statues in the background, in this one you have literally Alien and the Predator. Guess they still weren't very worried about copyright infringement at this point. So anyway, getting to the point, let's jump to the final stage of the game. The entrance is in stage 7, but getting inside isn't easy. Like the first game, you'll have to find 4 crowns by beating a certain 4 of the bosses, and you also have to find the Dragon Slayer. But additionally, to open this door, you need to find the battle suits, as well as the best shield in the game. You can tell all of these are the best, since you use the same keyboard key to equip them in the menu, Q. Additionally, you even need the best magic and item in the game equipped, Death Magic and the Cross, which are also equipped with Q. Lastly, you even need both your fighter and magic levels at the max, and you need to have 0 karma. Only then can you try your hand at the final stage. Stage 11 is a maze of walled-off tiny caves with multiple tower entrances in them. You'll need to somehow navigate through the towers in order to get to the King Dragon Garces at the end.
You are looking at the only Starfleet cadet who ever beat the no-win scenario.
Oh, and half the rooms in the tower have a boss in them. Not a big deal though, since the bosses in this game are a joke if you're powered up enough. I only feel a little bit bad for using a cheap shortcut through the final stage that I found online. The walls in the final stage can't be broken with acid, but you can break them by using an item called a silver rose, which creates a block that disappears when you leave the screen and come back. This seems to have been an oversight by the developers.
He cheated.
I changed the conditions of the test. Got a commendation for original thinking. I don't like to lose.
Just go in this entrance at the beginning of the stage, break a couple of walls, and you're at Garces already. In this one, you need to have not only the Dragon Slayer equipped, but also the cross, since Garces is undead. In the original Xanadu, I had an epic end battle thanks to being a bit underprepared, but in Scenario 2, it was pretty much a joke. How anticlimactic. The end roll is a straight-up Bible quote, which is probably why some people think the ending of the original Xanadu is also from the Bible. It's really long, and I get the impression the developers just wanted something epic-looking to scroll across the screen. When it finally gets to the end, there's actually a really cool musical transition into the credits. Feels like a much more modern game ending compared to the original. So many classic Falcom names here, and the only person listed under programming is Yoshio Kiya, the father of the Dragon Slayer series. And I think they literally listed every remaining Falcom staff member here under staff, whether they worked on the game or not. The game then locks up and plays another endless music track until you power off or reset. Wow, 3 ending BGMs. I mentioned in my first Xanadu video that some people consider this game to be broken, and the reason for that is how unbalanced the game can be compared to the original. There are apparently lots of cheap tricks you can utilize to make the game too easy, but I think I'm fine with this game being as easy as possible, thank you. And to give a counter opinion, some players were impressed with the amount of different ways Scenario 2 can be completed, depending on the player's playstyle and ingenuity. Here are a few secrets in the game you can mess with. On the disk change screen from the beginning, if you use a mantle or mattock to move down toward the text, you'll find that they're actually monsters that you can fight, named after the different systems the game was made for. Additionally, if you move down like this, you can get to an invisible enemy named Yamane Tomo. Tomo Yamane is one of the graphic designers. If you defeat him, you'll get the Vorpal weapon, the best weapon in the game for enemies other than the end boss. Use the mantle to get to the very edge of the battle screen and save your game in order to keep the Vorpal weapon for the beginning of Scenario 2. One more trick, enter any tower in Stage 1 and save your game without lighting a lamp. Then put the original Xanadu program disk in drive 1 and reset. You'll find yourself in one of the towers from the original Xanadu, except it's populated by those text enemies again. Leave the tower and you'll return to the disk change screen. Scenario 2 wasn't released for every system that got the original Xanadu. First of all, of course, there was a version for the first system Xanadu was ever released for, the Sharp X1. This version is missing the title screen music and only has PSG sound that cuts out during the sound effects, just like the original. And of course, Scenario 2 was never released on cassette tape. On the PC-88, the original Xanadu was quite lacking, with no FM sound or proper CPU timing in the battles, but luckily both of these issues were fixed for Scenario 2. In this version, the title screen music was changed to a much more somber tune resembling Chopin's Funeral March. And some of the BGMs were also shuffled around in some of these ports. Like the X1, the Fujitsu FM7 version has no title screen music, and it still has the same issue as the original FM7 Xanadu, where the character continues to walk even after releasing the keys. Like the original, there was even a version of Scenario 2 that could run on the 2 very oldest PC-88 models. This one lacks FM sound and joystick support, but other than that, it looks like the whole game is here. That's every version of Scenario 2, but there is some recent news for the Xanadu series. Apparently there's been a big new Xanadu game released on every 10th anniversary of the original, and 2025 will be no exception. A new Tokyo Xanadu game, this time taking place in Kyoto, is set for a Japan release. Xanadu Scenario 2 was the very first Falcom game that actually sounded like a Falcom game. Yuzo Koshiro is really the true founder of the Falcom sound, which he would later establish even more firmly with Sorcerian and Ys 1 and 2. Even after he had left the company, later Falcom composers did an excellent job of continuing that sound with games like Ys 3 and the Brandish series. But even putting aside the music, Xanadu Scenario II is an impressive add-on, which actually feels more like a full sequel rather than a mere expansion pack. We don't really need a game called Xanadu 2. This is the true sequel to Xanadu, as far as I'm concerned. I'm actually not sure why they didn't just release this as a standalone game. They could have easily replaced the training grounds from the original with a simple character creation screen. Maybe they thought that requiring the original Xanadu program disc would encourage even more people to buy the original. Maybe they thought it wouldn't be appropriate to release a standalone sequel to a game which was already a sequel to Dragon Slayer. Or maybe they just thought that adding a new scenario to an existing game was a cool idea. Falcom would explore this concept even more in Sorcerian, but regardless of why they did it, I'm sure happy that it exists. And it's another classic Falcom title that I'm glad to say I finally managed to play through. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-88 Paradise, and thanks so much to our patrons and YouTube members. Their support is doing a lot to keep this channel going. Thank you all for watching, and this has been Mr. Jakes from Basement Brothers, saying see you again in the next one.